Hello my dear students and hello watchers of my YouTube channel. We know that like everything else in life, academic practices, teaching, learning and evaluation processes after the COVID-19 pandemic has changed considerably, so we can actually consider it to what literary and critical theory defines as an epistemic cut or a paradigm shift. Subjective questions, as far as I suspect, and as far as the experts suspect, are going to be outdated in the current scenario because of the necessity of quick online evaluation of students. The students of humanities are jeopardized, they're confused. They think that there is a radical shift which is required in their preparation from what they were supposed to perform when the semesters began and what the situation currently runs as. This video and its sequence are meant to assure that nothing on the part of the students have actually changed. They have to undergo the same comprehension, the same in-depth study as the subjective evaluation process would have demanded of them in the current scenario too. Only the apparent or surface format of evaluating them would change. And by the same token, the nature and scope of MCQ or multiple choice quiz is also changing. Instead of an ordinary objective quiz which would check whether the respondent has knowledge or not, we are devising, the teachers all over the world in different universities are actually instrumentalizing and inventing a certain type of change post-COVID-19 MCQ in which the questions will be as good as subjective questions, in which the student has to first of all read the question, break down the question into comprehensive analytical components, and then respond with substantial thinking and reflection. How can we have an MCQ in courses like EM18 Gujarat Pachan Burma University, for example, or literary and critical theories with its application? The entire series of these lectures would concentrate on that. Today we will see, as the first part of these series of lectures, how to enumerate, how to estimate, how to analyze silently, without showing the overt calculations into full sentences of subjective answers, and how to actually hit bang on target on questions which are actually subjective but in form objective or multiple choice. Naturally, being the prelude or the first part of this series of lectures, the questions which will be taken up as exemplary in this lecture are easier than what would come in future. Let us see, without further ado, some examples. Who defined reading as an act of writing in the field of text that was read? The options for this question as possible answers, which are given on the question paper by the question setter Freud, Althusser, Saussure, and Derrida. Now, Freud will not be at all a possible answer, and therefore we need to eliminate it, because Freud had almost no discourse on reading, and reading acting as some kind of writing. Freud was talking about the psychoanalytic contents of human behavior, but he was silent almost as far as the practice of reading or literary reading went. Second choice which was given in the options is Althusser. Now Althusser is a person who is widely known to have written on ideology, ideological state apparatus, on the actual process of reading a text and how much is that strategy of reading an innovative act of supplementary writing itself. Althusser had no discourse, so we would have to eliminate Althusser also. So we are left with two options, and both of them are in the domain of structuralism and post-structuralism, Saussure and Derrida. So it's a case of 50-50, like in Cohn Vonnegut Prati Affirmative. See the two options. Saussure was talking about static structures which the human conventions and human articulations in language anchor in spite of the radical uncertainty and the radical unconnectedness between the signifier and the signified. He was not talking about the act of reading as such or the act of writing as such. So we will delete Saussure from the possible alternatives also. So we're left with only one option, Derrida. So if you are going by an elimination method, of course the answer would be Derrida. But when you are concerned about your final marks in the final semester, for example, elimination method is not 100% certainty. So you see the question once more. You have eliminated 3 of the possible answers and are left with Derrida. So in all probability, the correct answer is Derrida. But see, even if you don't know anything about Derrida, you know the names of Derrida's texts, Writing and Difference, for example. So the only person amidst the set which was given actually in the 4 options who was talking about the process of writing as an act, writing as an energy, writing as a procedure, who has a text, so to say, entitled by the signature of the text's name, Writing and Difference, is Derrida. So the correct answer, if you go by elimination method, supplemented by your partial knowledge about the names of the text and the basic tenets of Derridian deconstruction, would be Derrida. So the correct answer that you can safely now choose is, of course, Derrida. See the next question. Who argues the goal of literary work is to make the reader no longer a consumer but a producer of the text? The options are number 1, Saussure, number 2, Derrida, number 3, Roland Barthes, number 4, Edward Said. Now, out of the 4 options given, Saussure had nothing to talk about the literary work as such and the act of reading or reception or responding to the text. So, out of the 4, first and foremost, we can of course eliminate Saussure. So now we are left with 3 choices, Derrida, Barthes and Said. Derrida can be dropped because he was not talking about these political economic terms like consumer and producer. So we are now left with 2 choices, Roland Barthes and Edward Said. Now Roland Barthes was a post-structuralist who was talking about the new myths, who was talking about read-only text and write-only text. So he was talking about definitely the act of reading, and he was talking about the larger culture of political economy under whose purview the act of reading is yet another practice. So if there are two options given between part and saved, Rolla Barth, the man whose name is underlined in bold, is the correct choice. However, we have to eliminate the other possibility Edward said safely first. Now, Said can be eliminated safely because Said was talking about the Western stereotypization of the non-Western space as either extremely exotic and therefore not normal to the Western conception and comprehension and acceptance, or to the Western point of view, the non-Western space being dangerous and menacing. So it is about the otherization of the Western space that Edward Said was talking about. So we safely delete Edward Said and we are left with only one choice, Rolla Barth. So now let's see the next question. The error of reactionary socialism is that it reacted against the bourgeois without understanding the historical context of its motives. Second option, the reactionary socialism was actually very, very violent and criminal. Number 3 option, that the reactionary socialism as a discourse and a practice supported the bourgeois development. And number 4, that it reacted against socialism proper. Now, out of the 4 options, you have to understand that the key word here in this question is error. So even if you don't know anything about what is reactionary socialism, you can understand that this is not the Marxian stance proper, because from Marxian literary critical perspective, there is an error in it, although it is some kind of a cousin or a remote kin of the Marxian socialism. It's not pure Marxian socialism. It is a socialism which is not Marxian, and therefore in the gap between Marxism and socialism, according to the Marxian point of view, there is some error. And what can be that error? The option A actually looks the most pertinent because it reacted against the bourgeois without understanding the moment of the bourgeois emerging to the larger political, economic, materialistic history of mankind. To consider reactionary socialism just by the adjective reactionary is violent and criminal, that cannot be the error, because you see, reactionary socialism and Marxism differ in a point of view. Otherwise, the term that sets the gap wouldn't be error, which means an error in judgment and not actually a kind of wide gap in intention or practice. So in intention, reactionary socialism cannot react against socialism, cannot support the bourgeois development, cannot be violent, criminal. The only possible alternative is, of course, the first one, if you are going by simple intuitional ticking of the. Now, Hotel California, if you go with song, is from an unnamed but masculine point of view in which she, or the third person singular number feminine pronoun, is clearly demarcated. The girl who is waiting at the corridor and is showing the insides of the Hotel California some kind of welcome with a candle in her hand. The lady with the lamp, the mysterious lady, sets the speaker in a solid masculine intrusionist position, so it cannot be androgyny. It cannot be, of course, hegemony also, because the term hegemony means the cultural dominance of a particular segment of society by its elitistic offer of leadership which the other groups succumb to. And Orientalism is concerned basically about the representation of Eastern and non-Western spaces from the Western point of view as either dangerously exotic or dangerously dangerous or menacing. So we have to drop androgyny, we have to drop hegemony, we have to drop Orientalism, we'll have to take ideology as the most pertinent answer.